off, his phone was off. We don't know if it was off. It could have been off, it could have been in airplane mode, or it could have just simply not picked up signal during that time. What's odd, of course, and what's problematic for the defense is that his phone did pick up signal before the murders and after the murders.
Another significant coincidence, for those who believe in coincidences, I don't, is that there's this white car that's driving around and around at the time of the murders, close to the scene of the murders, caught on video. And guess what? The defendant, the suspect, the accused, what does he drive? A white Elantra.
The car's driving around, but then suddenly, during the window of the murders, we don't know where this car was. We don't know where it was parked. We just know nothing about the car. Identification of the Hyundai Elantra as, like, the suspect vehicle, that's a problem.
Another part of the case against Brian Kohberger is an eyewitness account. Dylan Mortensen, one of the surviving roommates. She told police that she saw a man around the time of the murders dressed in black, bushy eyebrows, wearing a mask covering his nose and his mouth that walked past her down the hallway.
And then we have Dylan, the surviving roommate, and she's so afraid that she goes back in her bedroom and locks herself up and then doesn't call 911 for 8 hours later. Okay, that is highly unusual. We look to expected behavior, expected response, reasonable response. That is what makes sense to jurors. Jurors are normal people. So you tell them a story, it better make sense, right? And it doesn't make sense.
Credibility always matters with witnesses. And this witness comes across as credible. Is she flawed? Yes.
Next, the house on King Road.
No one that lives here right now.
And the type of person capable of committing these murders.
Whoever did this, be it Kohberger or someone else, is a sexual domination killer.
Plus, Brian Kohberger's defense.
If he says, I was in this house before, that's why my DNA is in this house. All of a sudden, you might have a completely different trial.
In the fall of 2022, just a few months before the murders, Moscow police responded to a noise complaint at the house on multiple occasions.
And if I do have to come back here, $300-some ticket's coming your way.
Okay.
And it only gets more expensive from there. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Absolutely.
There was even an instance where there are people at the house, but none of the roommates are even there.
How goes it?
Oh, hi. How are you?
Who lives here?
We're not actually.
You don't know who lives here?
No, I
We're
don't.
just here for a noise complaint. So everyone here is trespassing?
Well, no one's here that's trespassing, but no one that lives here is here right now.
So where'd they go?
They're just not here. I have no clue where they went. No clue.
So you guys just throwing a party in their house at
They were here at one point. They're not here right now. I just searched all the rooms.
They left and went over to some other party, and everyone is about to
I just searched all
over
the
to
rooms.
another party. Okay. Who does live here? What are their names? I am actually not sure.
Jeremy Reagan lived near the house on King Road for a few years and saw a lot. Tell me about the house. What do you know about the house?
So when I moved here my first year, that house was not super bad, notorious for like students going in and out partying all the time. My second year, there was a ton of people all the time, in and out constantly. And then my third year, which is the year that all this happened, it was much more similar to the first year I was here. They did have more stuff going on there, but they were definitely nowhere near as loud, as crazy as that second year that I was here.
Does the fact that so many people were in and out of this house factor into the case against Brian Kohberger?
The fact that this Kings Road house was a party house is a huge big deal because it expands the universe of suspects. Who was there at the time of the murders? What was their connection to the victims? Who had access to this home before? Did they have possible motive to kill? For months we've been calling this a party house. This is a party venue.
One of the most important parts of this case is that DNA. And what we know is this is a party house. We know that there were hundreds of kids in this house. It could even have included him. And the thing is if he was in this house, are you suggesting that these four know everybody who's been there? I doubt that. And as a result, if he says, I was in this house before, that's why my DNA is in this house. Now we talk about that, and we talk about DNA transfer, and all of a sudden, you might have a completely different trial.
It's not just that the defendant's DNA is in the house. It's on a knife sheath, which is found next to Maddie's body. I'm a former prosecutor. This is game over DNA. And it's not just any DNA. It's single source DNA.
Single source DNA profile is the most informative type of profile we can hope to get from a crime scene. It's a lot of clear information and it's a lot of very specific information. If you're looking for DNA from a perpetrator, that's something that's related to a weapon and a weapon that could have been used in the commission of this crime, it would be a very rare event for anyone else to match with a single source male DNA profile. So it's very strong evidence.
Brian Koberger.
After graduating from DeSales University in the spring of 2022, Brian Koberger was accepted into the criminology PhD program at Washington State University. At the time of the Idaho student murders, Koberger was a teaching assistant. And a few of his students came forward to say they noticed a difference in his behavior after the murders.
No reason to connect him to that, at the time, but definitely around then, he started grading everybody just 100s. He seemed preoccupied is what I would have said at the time.
He would come in, be there for 10 minutes, leave, not say much. So he didn't really do that much, but you could tell there was some off about him.
What's still unclear is the prosecution's theory as to why he would want to kill these young people and what, if any, was the connection.
Motive is not an element of crime or murder. But of course, every inquiring mind wants to know why. Why would Brian Koberger do this to 4 innocent victims, college students? Could the state go to trial without motive? Absolutely, but I bet they won't. And the problem here is that we don't even have a connection to these victims. Forget about motive.
Steve Gonsalves, Kaylee's father, believes there's a good chance the murderer was tracking Kaylee and or her best friend Maddie.
I'd be a little bit surprised that there wasn't a clearer touch point that would suggest that he was interested in 1 or 2 of the people more than he was the others.
An Instagram account that was taken down shortly after Koberger's arrest with the username of Brian Koberger was following several members of the Koberger family. The account also followed Madison Mogan.
I'm Benjamin Mogan. I'm Madison Mogan's father.
I first met Maddie Mogan's father, Ben, at the Mad Greek restaurant a few weeks after the murders. Maddie and Xana both worked there. It's a popular restaurant in downtown Moscow.
Tell me about what a beautiful person she was.
Well, she was so great. She lit up every room she'd come in, and she was just so positive and fun, and we love her and miss her so much.
The Mad Greek restaurant. It's also one of the first places that comes up if you search for vegan food in Moscow. We know Brian Koberger claims to be a vegan because he asked for a vegan meal plan at the jail.
So maybe he did see Maddie and Xana at the Mad Greek and sort of became obsessed with them. But prosecutors made a point in their probable cause affidavit. They went into detail about this Reddit post that the defendant allegedly made, calling out to criminals to provide him with the reason why they chose their victims and committed their crimes. Now, I understand he studies this stuff, but this is still a little strange.
Sounds like he's looking for the reasons why people do the things that they do. Maybe to answer the question for himself. Maybe to explain for him why he's motivated in the way that he is. Are you trying to figure out who you are, or are you trying to figure out who they are? And in this particular case, I think the prosecutors are going to say, yeah, this was about him trying to figure out who he is, because we can tell you who he is. He's this guy.
And there's a big hearing tomorrow, and Court TV legal correspondent Chanley Painter joins us outside that courthouse in Moscow, Idaho. Tonight, where already it's getting cold, I can see, Chanley. Let's start here with the evidence. What is the evidence in this case against this accused killer who wants the indictment tossed?
Well, the prosecutors have so much evidence that they chose to seek the death penalty here and charged him with the top count, which, as you know, Vinny, if he is convicted and sentenced to death, that could possibly even mean death by a firing squad if the lethal injection drug is unavailable. So, a perfect time to refresh our viewers on what that evidence is from the prosecution side ahead of this hearing tomorrow. Let's take a look at it. First, we know, of course, the biggest piece of evidence is the DNA that was found on the button of the knife sheath found under Maddie Mogan's body at the crime scene. That was first led to Kohberger's father, and then after his arrest, a direct match to his DNA. Also, an eyewitness there at that crime scene, one of the surviving roommates, identified a tall male with athletic build, and bushy eyebrows leaving that crime scene. Well, we know Kohberger is 6 feet tall, 185 pounds, has those bushy eyebrows, as we've been showing our viewers. Also, most importantly, the video of his vehicle, the white Hyundai Elantra, traveling around the crime scene at the time of the murders. Vinny, that 2013 white Hyundai Elantra we've seen on video, and his cell phone data that aligns with that suspected route. We showed you night after night retracing those steps from that affidavit. And as of today, though, because he did waive his right to a speedy trial, the October trial date, of course, was vacated. We don't have a trial date yet for his death penalty case.
But we do have 2 hearings tomorrow. Can you give us some of the details of those 2 hearings?
Absolutely. Well, there's the first hearing. It's a closed hearing, so we won't be able to be in there and be privy to the details because it involves the workings of a secret grand jury proceeding. So that closed hearing is 9:30 local time, 12:30 Eastern, and it's taking up a motion from the defense to dismiss the indictment based on several grounds, including biased grand jury, inadmissible evidence, lack of sufficient evidence, and prosecutorial misconduct in withholding exculpatory evidence. I wish we could hear more about it, but those substantive filings were filed under seal, so we won't know that, but we will be inside. Our cameras will be inside the courtroom later that afternoon for a second hearing. That will deal with kind of the same issue, dismissing that indictment, this time on the grounds of error in the grand jury instructions, and so they want it either dismissed or in the alternate for the judge to remand to a preliminary hearing, Vinny, so that's what we will be watching tomorrow afternoon.
So both the hearings have taken place. The first one was dismissed, and the second one is where Judge John Judge decided that the prosecution has to turn over all the evidence, all the investigation of the genealogical DNA, basically from the knife sheath that was found in the crime scene of Maddie's bed. So the district attorney, or the defense attorney, Ann Taylor, believes that there's lack of sufficient evidence, biased grand jury, inadmissible evidence, prosecutorial misconduct, withholding exculpatory evidence. I wonder if they could use the BRADY GIGLIO law, since the evidence isn't being turned over.
Internal Affairs investigation is now underway for an officer involved in the case of accused murderer Brian Kohberger. And according to experts, that could mean good news for Kohberger's defense. Kohberger was arrested late last year for the murders of 4 University of Idaho students who were stabbed to death in their off-campus home. He's now being held in the Latah County Jail in Idaho, awaiting his preliminary hearing. In newly released court documents filed on Monday, Idaho prosecutors have, quote, become aware of potential BRADY GIGLIO material related to one of the officers involved in the above referenced case. The material, in the form of confidential internal affairs investigation, is hereby submitted in camera to the court. What all that means is prosecutors are required by law to turn any information over to the defense that could exonerate the defendant, help their case, or impeach the credibility of a witness. As Law and Crime Network host Jesse Weber explained on Dan Abrams Live, this could mean several things. An officer involved in the investigation could have lied or withheld evidence, meaning it could get thrown out. On a lesser scale, the officer may have had a pattern of misconduct in the past, but prosecutors have to disclose that information to the defense ahead of an eventual cross-examination. Right now, the case is under seal, so we don't have exact details about what happened. The prosecution has also asked the judge to issue a protective order on that information, which would then block the defense from releasing the information publicly.
It alleges that the defendant, Ryan C. Koberger, on or about November 13th of 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, did unlawfully enter a residence located at 1122 King Road, Moscow, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder.
Meanwhile, some reports say Koberger is closely following his case from behind bars, watching himself on TV. But Law and Crime Network host and public defender Brian Buckmeyer says that's not unusual.
I think it's very normal for someone to follow their case if it's highly publicized. They want to see what everyone's talking about, what they're saying about their personal life as well as about the case. It's like checking Instagram or your Facebook to see what people are tagging you in or saying about you.
New details about the night 4 University of Idaho students were murdered last year in their home just off campus. According to airmail, the 2 housemates who survived were reportedly texting each other while the killings were happening. Airmail claims jurors in the case leaked that information to the father of one of the victims, Kaylee Gonsalves, but he's not commenting tonight. According to the court documents unsealed in January, at least one of the surviving roommates woke up during the stabbing. She told investigators she heard what she thought was Gonsalves playing with her dog. Later on, the girl told investigators she heard crying from another one of the roommates. When she opened her door, she said she saw a masked man leaving the home out the side door. Police showed up the next day to find Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, and Madison Mogan all dead. Their accused killer, Brian Koberger, has his next day in court in a couple of weeks. Horrific murders happened is scheduled to be demolished. That was supposed to happen over the summer, but then they pushed it back to sometime this month. We reached out to the University of Idaho for an update on the house's status, and we're waiting to hear back.
Justice for the 4 victims. Condolence to the families.